Good morning, Genesis chapter 9. So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." And I love that verse because not only did God bless Noah, but he blessed his sons. I just love that. I love that God is a blessing God. I've always loved that. I've always loved the promise of God. I always have loved just how God will lavishly bless those that seek him. And it's just, he didn't have to be that way, but he is that way, and he has blessed us with so many things from, our physical health and our spiritual health and our emotionalness. And, you look around, even the earth is such a blessing. I was able to go on a trip this year and we went to different states. And I really just was like in awe of the beauty of America. And I'm just sitting back there going, man, I never knew how beautiful America was. I mean, I know where I live right now is at the beach, and it's always, I just love it. It's beautiful, this. But just to go from mountains into valleys and just big, big, long stretches of just open, wide open spaces, I was like, wow, God, you have, even though it's not a perfect world, it's still beautiful, and there's still beautiful things that we can be thankful for the beauty that is here. It's just amazing. So, if you're stuck in the city, get out, go out into nature and get out into some of these country places where it's just so beautiful, and I think it'll help you connect closer to God. We were in, at a national park in one of these states, and it was late at night, and we got to see just the stars that were just so full in the night sky. And I thought, hey, I said, no wonder so many people have expressed worship to God, because when you go out at night and the stars are just so magnificent, it's like you can't help but think of God, and the cities, I really feel like we're missing out on just that creativeness that brings people to worship. There's just too many concrete buildings and stuff, and that doesn't give you any, let's worship God with the concrete. No, it's when you're by the ocean, when you're feeling the waves, beat at you, or the wind and the sand, and you're climbing a mountain or a hill, or you're hearing the birds, or you're around nature. And that's, or you look at the night sky and you're like, wow, it brings glory to God. And so God has blessed us all around, and even with his word. And I'll just say that because I know we're living in tough times right now, but there is still so much to be thankful for. And then now we know that he's going to change this whole place around and make it even like amazing, like even more amazing, even more spectacular. But the thing here is, so he multiplies them. I like that because I teach my kids mathematics, and God's about multiplication. It's like that super increase. It's not just like this little adding, it's multiplying. So it's huge. But I find it interesting because in Adam and Eve's time, in the garden, there's just like this perfect harmony of animal and man and God walking together, talking together. And then when Adam sinned, we went into this place where God was still talking to man and stuff, but there was a change. And then now after the flood, there's even more changes that have happened. And one here that I found was interesting in verse 2. Let's see. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, of the birds of the earth that move, and the fish of the sea. They are given into your hands. So now there's a fear that comes upon the animals, between animals and humans. And I don't know, I find that very interesting, because the birds do fly away. You go try to approach one and, it flies away. They're afraid of us. And I thought, this is where it all came from. So this was a new relationship that we have, and I thought it was interesting, but they are still given into your hands. So God is saying, but you're still over them. God created man to have dominion over the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the animals. So we're still above the animals. And that's why I don't like, my daughter's doing science where they have humans in the animal kingdom. We are not animals. We are created beings. Specifically from God, and it's different, but Anyway, that's my whole thing on how science classifies this thing. But anyway, so then in verse 3, then he gives a new dietary thing. He says, and every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even the green herbs. So originally, God gave them just the herbs to eat out of the field. It seems like they were vegetarians. You know, there was plenty of fruit on the trees and all these things. But after the flood, animals were going to be food for us. And it says, but you shall not eat the flesh in its life. That is, its blood. Okay? So now God is talking about the life, and he's going to have the sanctity of life here in verse 5. For surely your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of a man. So God is establishing the sanctity of life. He's saying, listen, you know, no more you kill somebody, you get away with it. This is like, I guess, where they get capital punishment. And the Lord established it here. And it's like, oh, wow. And it says, verse 6, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For the image of God he made man. And so just that's a powerful statement. You know, man is made in the image of God. And man's life is precious. It's super precious. And it's so precious that God is saying, hey, if you kill somebody, you need to go. And I just think that's a powerful statement, because we're not seeing that kind of judicial system here in America right now. I know there is still capital punishment in certain states, but for the most part, people who do kill, you know, not all the time. They get what's just for them to receive as punishment. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And then God says, but as for you, and for you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply it. That's verse 7. So God again is saying, hey, you know, because back in the day with Cain killing Abel, he was able to get, you know, a seal upon his head and he was protected. But God's saying after the flood, no, we're going to stop this. And then God reestablishes his covenant in verse 9. And he says, as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every creature and the birds, and it goes on. And this is what he's establishing. He'll never again shall flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. So the flood was a complete, total change in the earth. It wasn't just a local flood. It was the whole earth was changed by that. The whole earth was underwater. And he says, and this is the sign, verse 12, and I like this, which I make between me and you and every living creature for the perpetual generation. I will set my rainbow in the clouds. Don't you just love that? I love that God set a rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be for a sign and the covenant between me and the earth. The rainbow is a covenant sign between God and the earth and man. And he says, and it shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every, you know, all the creatures of flesh, that the water shall never again destroy the flood. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature and all flesh that's in the earth. And this is the sign of the covenant which is established between me and all the flesh that's in the earth. So you see, the rainbow is meant to be a remembrancer of the covenant between God and man. That's what it means. And that's what it is. And so, you know, when I see a rainbow, I'm like, God sees it. He remembers. He's not going to wipe out this earth with the flood. And I thought, isn't that interesting? It kind of reminds them, he's like, oh, okay, not the flood, you know, because man's wickedness and man's sin is reaching another point to where he's going to bring judgment on the earth again. We've had such a long stretch, right, between Noah and to today of allowing the wickedness to accumulate in all the earth. If you thought about it, man, that would bring you into such depression. And so then he goes on about these three sons of his, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From these the whole earth was populated. So from Noah and his sons, the whole earth was populated. And then this is the last bit of this is talking about Noah in verse 20 began to farm and he planted a vineyard. And then he drank a wine and he was drunk. And he became uncovered in his tent. And so here Noah plants this. So time has taken place. It doesn't happen overnight. He was a farmer and then he planted a vineyard and then he had to make the wine and then he drank it and he got drunk. And one of his sons disrespected him and went into his tent, saw his father just laying there, but did nothing about it. And so when Noah woke up, he cursed his son and his grandson. He cursed be Cain, the servants of servants, he said. But the other two sons, they respectfully went back in the tent, covered their father. And then it says in verse, so just how, God is establishing again. Soon we're gonna get the 10 commandments, and one of those is the 5th commandment. Do you guys know that? Is honoring your father and your mother. And here, just right from the get-go, one of Noah's sons disrespected him. And I just find that, oh man, you could just see sin is still within us, and it's like, oh man, that's why we need Jesus. We need a Savior to come help and wipe away all of this stuff. And thank God he came. So verse 28 says, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and then he died. Genesis chapter 9. So we have the finishing of Noah and of his duties. Can you imagine being 600 years old and going through the flood, and then he lived 350 years after that. And so, he lived a long time, so he got to see a lot of what happened in the earth and was there for a lot of it. And that's it. But isn't that cool? I just want to leave with that blessing that we have the rainbow in the sky as a visible promise for us to know that God is with us. He's not going to flood the earth again like he did. And that he's a blessing God, and he keeps saying, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, and they did. You think of how many people, since that time have been born and have been in part of the earth. So anyway, I hope you guys are blessed by that. And it's Genesis chapter 9. And that's it. So thanks for sticking with it here. I know it's really hard to pick out a couple verses, and I'm just kind of going through kind of a highlight of what's in it, but I'm sure there'll be chapters that I only pick out one verse. I'm sure that'll happen sometime. It's just hard to when you have such good testimonies of history and earth and science. It's so full, and we just started. So anyway, hang in there, you guys. Have a blessed day. We'll catch you next time.